Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Meet a Yogi. I'm here with Robert Gardner. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, glad
Thanks
to
for
be here.
joining me. Thanks for joining me today. We're talking about how to get more touch in 2018. Robert Gardner is a licensed massage instructor, therapist, and a yoga teacher in Austin, Texas. He primarily uses what most people would consider Thai massage and yoga and pain science to help his clients and students. Robert's been practicing healing arts for 15 years, and he continues to push the edge of both massage and yoga. He came into this work after being in a drunk driving accident in college, and he was a healthy, vibrant 22-year-old who turned into someone who was severely depressed and in pain for years with no relief due to this drunk driver. And I think we might talk about this a little bit today, Robert,
Sure.
on our topic. And as he worked on himself and his clients, he blended yoga, Thai massage, and pain science into a practice that he calls Reboot. It's the 21st century manual therapy. He believes it's the future of both yoga and the massage industries. Robert is heavy on social media production, educating therapists, and on crushing all the boxes that we find ourselves in. Yay! After authoring 700 pages of sequence manuals and what will be 9 DVDs of educational content and Thai massage, Robert began the Reboot Insiders Club, which is a subscription service that documents Robert's practice teaching therapists interactively, and it's only $7 a month to get access to this premium education for Reboot members only. So welcome, thank you. It's great, this bio, it just gives you a whole range of all the work that you're doing, not only your own practice, but also all the education that you're doing. We're gonna talk a little bit about, using touch and using yoga to heal yourself today. And I was interested in your own journey of healing and what happened with this accident that you were in. Police officers don't call them accidents, they call them crashes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because, it's never really an accident, So tell me about this crash that you were in and how it affected you and what you did what that taught you about healing.
When I was 22, I was returning from Jazz Fest in New Orleans to Baton Rouge, where I live, and a drunk driver just slammed into the back of the car I was in. I have no idea how fast he was going, but it essentially totaled the car. The car careened off the road and ran into some trees, so it was a double impact. I had to go to the hospital. They ran x-rays. They said, nothing's broken, you're fine. And then, of course, you have the initial soreness the next day from, this trauma, essentially. It feels like, you worked out in a way that you've never worked out before, times 10.
Right.
Just horribly, horribly sore everywhere. And then over time, what happened was I seemed to be having pain in my neck and, various parts of my body. It wasn't just my neck because I had a whiplash. I just had a general sense of pain. And then one of the things that happens is you have all of your general life struggles. You got to pay the bills, go to work, take care of the kids, do those things. But when you add trauma on top of it, you have physical pain that makes everyday life that much more challenging. And to make a long story short, I developed a case of TMJ dysfunction. I had horrible pain in my head. I continued to have ongoing problems with my upper back and neck. I just hurt. And I'd always been a very robustly healthy kid. I was in gymnastics in high school, was fairly physically, fit.
Right.
So for me to be ill was a completely different experience. I didn't really have coping mechanisms for it.
Right.
I wound up discovering massage because a coworker I worked with at a health food store was in massage school. I had one massage, decided to go to massage school, and that's where everything started to change. As I kept digging within anatomy, physiology, massage, trigger point therapy, myofascial release, all these different kinds of body work, I started working as a therapist and then was like, well, what else is there? I'm not 100% complete. I'm somewhat better. I'm 50, 60% better. What else is there? And it was, yoga was cheap. And when I say it's cheap, it was like $10.
You're right, compared to massage, where it's,
Yeah.
$50, $60 a session.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, so I've already had some massage. Let's go see what this yoga is. I took 3 classes. At the end of the 3rd class, I had a nearly religious epiphany and went, wow, what is going on? And those 2 practices, massage and yoga, became the core of what I've dealt with in the last 15 years. I was continually looking at both of these, and slowly they started to merge. And I went, wait a second, this is the same stuff. These are not separate disciplines. This is the same stuff regarding the body, combined and used in very different ways.
I'll agree with that. My personal experience with this was different, where I didn't really have this whole journey through pain, but I always have been, felt very strongly that I would be a yoga teacher, and I became very serious about yoga. When I did finally get my teaching, certificate and started teaching, my daughter was pretty young. When she was about 3, we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. And what was great about that was that it was this place where there's just so much holistic healing work. At the time, there just weren't that many yoga teachers. It's weird to think, because it wasn't really that long ago, but there was only 1 studio in the town, and it wasn't a very good studio. I helped to start a yoga studio there, but I was one of the most like the top yoga teachers in the town, which isn't to say that I was like all that, all of that. It was just that there wasn't that much yoga in the town. I could go for free to any of the other yoga teachers at the studio that we started out, but there wasn't really somebody who was a teacher for me. So I started doing a lot of body work as a way to have a different journey for myself. I started doing chiropractic. I did Alexander technique for a while. And there was a period where I was pretty depressed. It was toward the end of my first marriage that I started doing a lot of massage. And I really found that it was just a great way, when I didn't have a lot of energy, to let someone else do the work of healing for me. Didn't have that same dramatic impact that yoga does, but at the same time, I find that when I am struggling, I know that I can turn to massage and get relief emotionally for myself. And I use that today too. I find the same thing, that, when I need that push. Do you see a difference? How do you see, is it all together for you, or is it, are there times when you kind of turn to yoga practice and times when you turn to massage?
The thing is, from an intellectual standpoint, I know that they're, dealing with the same body. From a cultural standpoint, I understand that people think of these as separate things. Going to get a massage isn't the same experience as going to get, take a yoga class. What I use just depends on what's available. So sometimes nobody's around. And when nobody's around, I'm forced to use like self-massage techniques using foam rolls, tennis balls, or using asana itself to be able to mobilize a joint, to mobilize through deltoids in my arm, to be able to access something. There's also the component that with yoga, you get a bit of strengthening in addition to relaxation. Typically one's considered active, one's passive. I was just using both. And in my day-to-day existence, I found the yoga was really increasing my overall sense of calm. It tended to reduce anxiety and pain for me. I had a much greater degree of mental clarity from yoga. And then massage was this supplement. When I did have an off day, or when I had someone to work on me, it seemed to increase all of the things I liked about yoga. My tissues could give more. My range of motion would increase. My overall sense of well-being would improve. The thing that happened with massage is, in addition, you had this dose of touch. And there's something about touch itself as in the pain science community, they call it the biopsychosocial model. But essentially, apes and like natural habitats like grooming. I hate to bring this up because
no, I want to actually, this is exactly what, I want to go into is this whole thing about, why touch is important to us. So I'm curious about this research, and can you talk a little more about it?
So essentially what it is without, pigeonholing it too bad, the biopsychosocial model is looking at primates, looking at our ancestors, looking at touch, interaction, psychology, emotions, all of the factors that go into being a human. In other words, you're not just a reduction of, an organism broken down into organ systems, broken down into organs, this reductionist thing. You're actually looking at, well, what effect does touch have? Our primate ancestors like bonobos spend countless hours sitting down and grooming each other and literally picking lice, picking bugs out of their fur. Gross, right?
No, well, as a mom, I've done things like that with my daughter, and I can tell you, not picking lice so much, but fortunately she never had lice, but things like picking her zits and stuff, where I can tell you, I know it was much more than just her wanting that. It is sort of this, bonding thing, where it's okay, help me out here. And I know that it's about more than that. And we don't talk about those things that much, but, so I guess socially we're not in a place where we do that to each other, at least not in public anymore. Maybe with their children and brush their hair, do little things. But
I think part of the reason people in the United States are so crazy about their pets is they're getting some of their touch needs met through their animals, through their cat, through their dog. They're able to deal with some of those same things in a safe way with animals.
I wonder if these kind of rituals that people have, where they're kind of oral rituals, like smoking used to be. And it's interesting because I heard a great theory that all of these water bottles that people carry around, it's basically a replacement for cigarettes, what used to be social for people. I thought it was a great, comment. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's it's socially acceptable to be carrying something around. And, and I think it's a lot more about holding something than it is about being thirsty.
Yeah. There's lots of levels to it. It's just to understand fundamentally that people need touch. All the research studies show this across the board. People have, I think, a higher degree of anxiety, depression, mental health issues when there's a complete dearth of touch. And in the culture at large, there's very little. That's where massage therapists are really on the front lines. Then when we get to the yoga community, there are discussions, arguments about whether yoga teachers should be touching, if it's hands-on assists, those sorts of things. And I'm right in the middle between the yoga and massage community. Both make sense to me, and increasingly I was fusing the two in various ways. I like working with the yoga community specifically because I can tell that they don't have as much of a set of parameters for touch. And I like being able to teach yoga teachers how to introduce that into their classes, into their private sessions in a way that has real integrity for their students.
Yeah, I think that'd be really interesting to learn about that. I mean, can you talk a little bit about how it is that people can incorporate that in? Share a little bit about what you teach?
Over time, there's going to be more content on my subscription service. We're kind of diversifying a little bit. The first piece we put up was really Bodywork. It's what people think of as massage on a mat. And then slowly what I'm doing, now that we've got this big chunk, is I'm trying to add spokes to the wheel. And part of that is, if you're a yoga teacher and you're teaching a group class, I'll give you an instance. You're doing reclined twists, simple, easy reclined twists. And you have a new student in class who's never been in class before. They're not quite sure about the positioning, the alignment. So you come along, you grab one of their arms that's down, and you gently lift and traction their arm and shoulder blade up.
Right.
To give them a little bit more rotation through their thoracic spine. And then you come and sit down next to them and use your legs and feet to essentially put one foot along their sacrum to gently traction their arm. Now, that's a very safe assist, But what happens for that student, if they're in a place to receive that, it means that you've increased connection with that student, and you're hopefully increasing their sense of awareness. It probably wouldn't take more than 30 seconds to do that. And then you can go work on someone else or give them a spot
Yeah.
modification. If you learn how to, I would say eloquently, if you learn how to use that deftly in class, I think it really starts to create yoga teacher and rock star yoga teacher.
Right.
There's something about this that I think it helps people connect with you more. So when you go teach a class, Suzanne, your students, in my opinion, they're not just studying yoga, they're studying yoga with you. There's
Yes.
something about your presence, your energy, your interaction that they crave. And I guess what I'm really trying to get yoga teachers to do is to give their students more intimacy, more authenticity, more integrity, and using touch as a vehicle to do so.
Yeah, I don't like the trend, and I do understand where it's coming from. A lot of it's coming from the fact that a lot of yoga teachers just are very poorly trained right now, and they don't really quite know sort of like, you know, what kind of touch is appropriate for what level of student. So they, you know, they're not, a lot of them have just decided to go against it. The other thing that yoga teachers aren't touching so much anymore is of the awareness of trauma research. And you brought that up, that you had gone through trauma. And I've been doing a lot of research about trauma. And, you know, it's fascinating because a lot of what I've been learning is that so much of it is unconscious or subconscious, really subconscious, not unconscious. But what happens during a trauma event is that you disassociate. And so we usually just have very little direct memory of what happened in your conscious mind, but subconsciously that it is deeply affecting your life. I've been going back through and, you know, learning about trauma that happened in my past, and it's kind of shocking to see, like, oh, well, there's this thing that happened in my past that deeply affected me that I kind of had no memory of. It's a little bizarre to start to piece together that story again and start to incorporate it into my own understanding of myself. So I do understand where people, particularly people who have gone through really bad trauma, where they're saying, like, you shouldn't just go and just touch it, you know, without permission, and you don't really know how somebody might react because you don't know how that person was touched in the past. And do you have a point of view about that with trauma? Have you dealt with people are dealing with that?
I don't deal with it so much in a direct intellectual way. So, for instance, when I'm teaching classes for massage therapists or I'm working with yoga students, I don't often encounter like students specifically who are talking about trauma. I know that with touch itself, the point that I've gotten to is I try to act with some sense of integrity and awareness. And then the thing that is very difficult to teach is it's a little bit like, have you been to a party before and you just interacted with someone who just, wow, there was something about their social skills. They just spot on. Their timing, interaction, ability to verbally communicate with you was just amazing in comparison to someone who's socially awkward.
Yes.
Like and the thing is, I don't know how to teach this. This sometimes is a little bit more my natural ability. I think I'm good at reading facial expressions, and even if I don't know exactly what you're feeling, I know something's not quite right. And when something's not quite right, I know to back off from whatever's going on. Those are the things that I think are really, really difficult to teach.
I think I understand what you're saying. I think for me personally, I believe that the big thing is to keep a conversation and keep people safe. And it's interesting because I do think that creating people to feel safe to talk about what's going on with you, it requires way more than just saying, like, oh, are you all right? You know, it really does involve really creating a experience where it's okay for people to criticize you or to make a suggestion for things to be different. and to be okay and show them, look, I'm not going to be hurt by it. I only care about you having a great experience, and that you're going to keep on having that conversation with them. Yeah. I think more than anything, it's about doing that. And but there's a lot of ways that people try to do it that I think may not be effective. And I think you're right. Like, I don't know exactly how you teach it to people, but I think that it's important that we talk about it with people and try to give them as much specifics as possible about what that means.
Yeah. I think there are various approaches. It just depends on where you're at and what you think is going to work to initially help you to get started. It's a little bit like having conversations about consent, and it's like, do you ask first?
Yes.
Is it okay if I do this? I have a tendency to go the other way, which is I'll do a little bit and say, how's this? And they go, oh, that's really nice. Or I say, how's this? And they're like, it's okay. I'm like, do you want more? And they say, no. I'm like, okay. And I
right.
But there are little subtle distinctions, and I don't think necessarily there's a complete right or wrong answer. It's as subtle as that dinner party and the sort of interaction I would have with you or other people.
Yeah.
You know, because I've been a body worker for so long, I'm very, very comfortable with touch, but I think I have an increasingly like broad perspective of what touch is. You know, like when I hear conversations on social media and it's like the creepy guy, the creepy touch, this, that, I think that I've largely been able to avoid that because I had a little bit more emotional intelligence. But when I'm working with students, it's increasingly challenging to convey. And even in doing interviews like this, I'm increasingly looking at that and trying to pick it apart to be able to understand it, to discuss it more eloquently.
I know it's interesting because sometimes if you have somebody who can be sort of right on the edge of creepy, they can actually be a really interesting place to explore. If there's somebody where you feel safe, but they're sort of doing things that if you didn't feel safe would not be comfortable, those can be really interesting kind of interactions to explore. And, I've had massage therapists who did cross the line, and I've had massage therapists who could kind of like be at that line. Yeah. And I love being able to passively receive and explore my own reaction to touch because it just makes me aware of things in a way that I'm not otherwise. I think it's important to put yourself in a receiving mode sometimes and not always be active in your own healing.
Yeah.
Because other people can see things in you that you might not even know are there.
Yeah. There's also a question, as a yoga teacher, for instance, how authentic with your students do you want to be? How much of yourself do you want to put on display? You know, there's various kind of attitudes about this within the massage therapy community about sort of how real are you to your clients? You know, do you keep your personal life completely separate? You know, what are those lines? And I think they're variable. I think also in the United States, we have a culture of massage and we have a culture of yoga. Whether or not we like that, it's like there's a sort of culture about it, you know. You can get away with posting stuff on Instagram in the yoga community that you probably wouldn't want to do in the massage community, but they're different practices to most people. I'm having conversations with lots of massage therapists about social media, and constantly what I'm getting is, do I have a business profile and a personal profile? And it's that distinction in social media between my personal and professional life, which for women in my industry is very important to a degree. Then also you're dealing with, the thing about the yoga teacher is the yoga teacher, I think, more often than not wants to be authentic. They want Instagram photos of them drinking a beer at the local concert or whatever. There's something about that. And then when you take these two areas that typically people think of as separate and you combine touch or a crossover, there's cultural context. When people go to a yoga class, do they expect to receive any touch?
Yeah, I don't know. I do. I love to, to me, it's an important part of, both going to a class and being a teacher.
Yeah.
But then I also See, when I got into teaching, I had this idea because my teachers were so experienced and skilled. I mean, like one of my very first yoga teachers was John Schumacher. You know, like it was crazy that I studied with, you know, one of these top teachers so early on. I mean, there was so little yoga going on in the United States at that time. So I had very high values, and I studied yoga until I really knew it in my body before I started teaching. And so a lot of yoga teachers now, they're sort of roped into these teacher trainings when they're pretty new and inexperienced. So I think that they don't have the confidence about, you know, like they just don't have the depth, the background to know, like, when it's okay to touch people just because they haven't experienced it as a student yet.
Yeah. I think what I've seen is in both camps, there's some degree of anxiety about touch generally. Massage therapists have a very encultured, ingrained, educated box to deliver touch. And then I came along with Thai massage jam and screwed everything up. Because they're like, wait a second, what's going on? Do these people have licenses? And for me, I think instead of touch making people anxious, I'm one of those people where touch does exactly the opposite. The reason I'm such a big proponent of touch is I find touch to be deeply intimate, deeply satisfying, and ultimately like calming to me personally. So like you and I, we have an interaction. We've met in person once, right?
I think actually twice. I think we went to two of the MIS. Right, you were at a couple of those moving into stillness discussion group gatherings, discussion group gatherings.
Because to me, when I have conversations with you like this, I'm like, you make the perfect client. Loves yoga, loves massage, and responds well to touch. And there's something, I think, even more so when I talk about women's issues in the massage industry. I'm a male in a culture where we have to deal with Harvey Weinstein, Louis C.K., and all the Me Too.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like I have an odd sense of social responsibility about being able to deliver extremely, what I think of as affectionate, nurturing touch in a very healthy way.
Yeah.
I was working with a male client of mine the other day, and it was hysterical to me because I've worked with this client for years. And when I realized what we were doing, we were lengthening some muscles in the back of his neck. And what I had done was I was sitting on the mat, and I had propped my thigh in such a way to lift his head onto my thigh. And what I'm doing is I'm lifting his head forward so he can get some length, so he can like press his neck back and around to like mobilize through his cervical spine to get into this tissue. And then as he was sitting there, I reached up and like as a joke, I put my palm on his forehead and like stroked his hair and made some joke about it. Because we're friends, like we drink beer together. It's no big deal.
Right.
And then when I thought about it from the outside and how it looks, it's like, why does Robert have his client's head in his lap?
Like, right.
Right. And the thing is, but I have a sort of, I've created my own little context. When people work with me, they know they're getting something different. But with that client specifically, I had enough intimacy and enough prior interaction with him for him to laugh about it and understand what was going on. Because I was just trying to find what was most biomechanically correct. But from the outside, it looks like this deeply intimate,
right,
thing.
sexual, like sexual. Yeah. That's what I like.
Yeah, it's like the thing is, if I took you and put your head in my lap and was stroking your hair, what do people think?
Right.
They're like, whoa, dude, this isn't massage. This is creeping me out. But again, it's cultural context. We've seen photos of Patabi Joyce doing hands-on adjustments with female students that get floated around, and people have very negative responses to it. And I understand both ends of the spectrum. It's like, was he just doing a yoga adjustment, or was there something untoward going on? Right.
So if you're watching and you're not familiar with Patabi Joy, he was the head of, he founded Ashtanga Yoga, and there's pictures of him, it looks like from the pictures, molesting female students. And there's been, for many years, there were reports of him doing it. It was kind of whispered about in the yoga community. He died a few years ago, and now, and especially with all that's happened with Me Too, more and more, that conversation is happening about, was his touch appropriate? I've seen some Ashtanga yogis say that you don't understand what he was doing. Those were very advanced yoga students that he was touching, and he was giving them, you know, like very advanced adjustments. And I've also seen people say, no, he was molesting them, and I was there, and he touched me inappropriately. And so there's been a big spectrum of, there's not a consensus that he was, but I think that there's, to me, from what I've heard, I've always thought that he was.
Yeah. You know, you don't want to be considered suspect. And
Yeah.
I engage in a form of body work that, although I don't do like hands-on adjustments when you look at those Patabi Joyce pictures, it doesn't look like that. There are things that I'll do in session that feel totally normal to me, that from an outsider's perspective, even knowing the massage community, if you took photos of everything I did, you'd go, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It looks more like Brazilian jiu-jitsu sometimes. I'm like interlacing limbs and tractioning and pulling on you. There's multiple points of contact. Even though the form of work I teach is clothed, it's more physically intimate.
Right. And because you're clothed, it does help, though, that to make sure that people feel safe. I mean, I've had with massage, I think that sometimes it is, I've had both men and women massage me, but sometimes the experience of having male touch is, can be a very healing place to be, because as a woman, not all of male touch has been good.
Yeah.
And so to have somebody who is, you know, that where I can explore my reactions, that can be a real source of healing for me. Yeah. And especially if somebody is good at, you know, creating energy. The other thing also that we haven't talked about with touch and with yoga is that I often find what you said, that sort of, it's like, it can almost kind of like seal in an energy that you can, if I've done like a lot of yoga, physical yoga asana, then sometimes if I get a massage after that, that it's kind of, it sort of, it gives me this chance to like process that energy of that new thing that came up in a way that I couldn't if I just did yoga alone.
I think they're extremely complementary, even if we think of the practices as separate. This is yoga, this is massage. Mixing the two as a supplement to your practice, I think, is beneficial.
And we had talked about before we got on this idea of sort of, you know, yoga, your yoga practice being a way of sort of healing from the inside out. And then when you're working with massage, it's the opposite of healing from the outside in. Yeah. And you have this idea of maybe being able to take these two practices and complementary. So I'm putting a challenge out there to those in the yoga community who haven't really explored massage as a complementary practice to start to do it. It is more expensive, but there's ways that you can. Usually most of the places have some introductory pricing, or if you purchase packages, it's more affordable. And I do think it's really valuable to do it over a period of time with somebody where you start to understand what their skills are. Sometimes, like I've worked with people where, you know, I'll say, oh, do deep tissue massage, and they're terrible at that. But then I learn, if I talk with them about energy, they're very good. Sometimes it just takes a while to figure out where that person, how you connect with that person, how they, you know, what their strengths are.
When we talk about yoga, and it's like yin yoga, ashtanga yoga, iyengar yoga, anusara, like Bikram, like different kinds, different styles of yoga. Body work is equally as diverse. And if you're not familiar with this, you kind of have to ask around. Most of the people in the yoga community, in my opinion, if you're going to get something, you should probably try to find someone who does Thai massage. If you can find a massage therapist who's a yoga teacher who also does Thai massage, that's probably even the better combination. Thai massage, generally, because of its mobilization and the way the body is used, I think is the real tie-in. If you get just a standard Swedish and deep tissue massage, I think that's great as well. I would never disparage that. But for what yoga teachers and yoga aficionados, yoga students are looking for, Thai massage is nearly ideal.
Perfect. Well, I think that we're kind of at a good stopping point with our conversation. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what you're doing with the Reboot and the membership site.
Oh, okay. So Reboot is my trademarked sort of practice. and bodywork style, that blending of massage and yoga. If you also added pain science, looking at cutaneous, subcutaneous nerves. So yoga from a standpoint of like nadis, prana, that's not necessarily in and of itself science-based. I don't want to diminish it, but at the same time, I don't tend to use a lot of energetic language discussing yoga. The same thing happened with Thai massage to me, where it was sen lines and loam, which are wind that flows through the sen lines. I was looking at that and looking at science, and I said, okay, Thai massage, yoga, ancient traditions. What happens when you bring pain science and you fuse it all together? Because I was confusing people because I was looking at stuff from weird angles, and I said, what is this? And I was like, it's a reboot. The sessions are 3 hours long. As I worked on educating students, I produced workbooks and DVDs, sequence manuals. There were 700 pages of workbooks, and then like the videos that went along with it. We got to a point where I couldn't produce workbooks and videos fast enough. So what happened was, right now we've got 700 pages of sequence manuals. In February, we go in to finish the last DVD set. That'll be 9 DVDs. We've already started the subscription service where quite literally what I'm doing is I'm recording my classes, recording sessions, shooting additional content. There's about 75 hours of video instruction on Teachable. It's available through my website. It's robertgardnerwellness.com. There's a link there on the store page. What happens in the subscription service is you have access to that pre-recorded 75 hours of content. You get one live interactive class a month, and you get access to a private Facebook group to ask more questions so that I can shoot video and then answer your questions and upload that content. It's an interactive, ongoing way of studying with me in a subscription form. It's normally $7 a month, but we have a coupon code that's I want to reboot, all letters, I want to reboot, and it makes it $1 for your first month.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'll hop in on that. So we'll put the links down and put the coupon code into the description. If it's for the YouTube, it'll be down below. If you're on Facebook, it'll be up above. And also I just want to, well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. You've been so great to share that with the group. And I'll put this up today and have it for you so that you can share it around. I also want to just let people know that I'm going to be helping people, speaking of social media, doing a class for just getting started creating your first YouTube video. And so it's going to be $127 for 4 weeks. I'll be working with people in a small group setting on Zoom video conference, teaching people just how to get started with your YouTube video. You don't need any special equipment, just your cell phone, and help you load it up and help you figure out what you say and how you become, you know, more engaging, and not just like actually to get a video up, but also to go, you know, be comfortable with your persona on a video. Yeah. So I'll be starting that this week, and I'll put the links into that below as well. So thank you so much, Robert.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on again.
Thank you. Bye.
See you soon.